Okay, Doc, I'm back in charge reading the questions. Hello, Dave, Dr. Rand. I know you have covered standard high blood pressure on the show, but I have a bit of a unique situation. I seem to have isolated systolic hypertension while on TRT 200 milligrams per week. My blood pressure sits at 140-150 over 75/80 fairly regularly. My blood count and hemocritic, oh, hemocritic.
Hematocrit.
Yeah, there you go. Are within normal range. What other things should I look for in my blood work? What would be effective for lower systolic without lowering my diastolic? Thank you.
If it's just systolic, one of the things that might be causing is the increased tone just from being on testosterone, giving you a little bit more energy. There's all kinds of very plausible explanations, but what I've seen help is something that will relax the smooth muscle of the vasculature. So magnesium, which most people don't have enough of floating around anyway. Remember magnesium back from you guys called the citric acid cycle, but we used to call it the Krebs cycle, how we convert food into usable energy. You need all your B vitamins, zinc, coenzyme Q10, and magnesium to convert food into usable energy. And when you're under stress, you're burning through your magnesium because you're burning through energy. And so most people are short in it. And so, they tend to be a little bit too tight. Good old magnesium glycinate or something that's well absorbed. You don't want a laxative like magnesium hydroxide or magnesium sulfite or magnesium oxide. Those are the cheap versions, which, that's in milk and magnesium hydroxide. That's just going to make you poop, okay? But something that's well absorbed, like I say, a magnesium glycinate or magnesium threonate, which actually crosses the blood-brain barrier, that will help loosen up the muscles by loosening up the smooth muscle of the vasculature, getting more blood flow in there, and reducing the tension in the vessels. And that would be my first try. If it's simply systolic, okay? If it's both an elevation in diastolic and systolic, then the one thing you hadn't mentioned is check your estradiol. Make sure you're not holding extra water because your estrogen's gone a little too high. But I'm leaning more toward the former based upon what he's saying. I'll bet you it's just a little increased tone. And also make sure that this is a true, I didn't want to say it's a diagnosis, although technically if it's above 140, 145, 140, it's type 1 hypertension. But it can be overdiagnosed if you're taking it always at the doctor's office or always at the Save-On in a particularly small cuff, by the way. Cuff size is important too. If you're a big guy, you got to use a bigger cuff. Otherwise, you'll get a roughly 10-point elevation in your reading.
Well,
but do the testing at home. And there's a guy named Eric Topol who's really good. Okay, he's got a foot in both the clinic and in academia, and he makes a great point. He's one of my heroes in medicine. He's great. For the most part, he hits the nail on the head. You've heard of white coat syndrome when people go into a doctor's office and they get tense. So of course they're going to get a reading that's crazy.
I know.
Take it at home. Spend the money if it becomes even close to an issue, right? Spend the money on your own blood pressure cuff. And take it first thing in the morning, midday, at home, before dinner or whatever, on the weekends when you tend to be relaxed. Yeah. If you have a reading that's low, I don't want to say low, that's normal, that's not high, you're okay. Because when we go to the gym, it goes to the roof.
Yeah.
It's the chronicity of high blood pressure that causes the problem, not the spikes. So that means it's not pathological. You don't have renal artery stenosis or atherosclerotic plaque causing the problem. It's just, no, I'm wound up at the moment.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah.
And I think that's what it sounds like with, he's I don't want to say he's wound up, but you got a little increased tone. And try some magnesium would be the first thing I would try.
Nice.
And then make sure the diagnosis is actually one that's real.
Thanks, Doc. Okay, Doc. Hi, Dave. Can you ask the doc about his thoughts on preventive measures and possible natural supplements for exertion headaches? I'm 31 years old, and I just got my first one a few days ago, and it was horrendous. For the record, I never get headaches. I was pushing my body to the limits while doing some heavy legs, and I forgot to breathe properly on my last set. It felt like a shot in the back of the head. I'm almost back to normal now after 6 days. I have not touched caffeine since then to ensure that I keep my blood pressure down, as this is what was recommended online. Is there an underlying cause for these headaches, other than a simple exertion? Is this something every bodybuilder or powerlifter will experience at some point? Thank you in advance, as always, for the educational video.
I have to say, and I could do a little research, but an exertion headache, I'm not sure if that's a medical term. Is he getting a headache when he's obviously doing, what do you say, squats or something,
Yeah,
heavy legs?
Yeah, heavy legs.
I remember getting some of those when I was a kid, but it was related to sinus pressure. You know, when you're using the Valsalva maneuver, they call it, where you're bearing down like we would, doing a heavy squat or a leg press, you're going to increase the pressure in your head. And
should it last 6 days though?
well, that's the other thing. You beat me to it. I mean, normally it'll mess up your workout.
Yeah.
And you go home, and after a few hours, or maybe till the next morning, sometime during the night it'll dissipate.
Yeah.
But you go, wow, that just doesn't feel right. But that should be related to sinuses, or exertional could imply that it's related to tension. And this one's kind of weird. If it were something serious, you would think that it would only get worse with time, not better with time. In other words, if you blew out the circle of Willis, and you had a brain bleed or something like that, then yeah, it would only increase the pressure, and you'd have more of an issue. So, I go back to the magnesium, which we just talked about, keeping the muscles supple so you don't get tension-related headaches. I don't know that this is common. Did it ever happen to you?
No.
Yeah, I don't have people coming in and complaining about what he refers to exertional headaches. Again, though, I get everything. I do remember when I was younger, first starting out with lifting, I would get those, and I remember they're being diagnosed as sinus. And I grew up in Miami, Florida, so we had plenty of mold and mildew and stuff that always gave you a runny nose, and it made sense at the time, and it went away.
I remember getting headaches from too much nitric oxide sometimes, though, while I was doing the set. You take too much NO.
Yeah.
And then you do your set, and as you're doing it, it just pounds in your head, and you stop it, and it goes away. That I remember.
Well, it leads me to the next part, which I don't want to leave out too, where caffeine restriction is probably one of the worst things you could do, because if it is what you imply, the blood, the vessel dilation, then restricting your caffeine intake can actually make it worse. And that might be where the 6 days come to think of it, right?
Oh.
He had this exertional headache, and then he cut caffeine thinking, oh my gosh, this is caused by that. And then withdrawals for, up to 6 days, even a week, usually 3 to 4 with caffeine withdrawal, but everyone's different. That could have affected it. So, things that constrict the blood vessels would be your best bet if that's the key. Well, and you bring up another good point. Thank you very much. If he's taking a speed stack or whatever the pre-workout drink is that has a lot of L-arginine or citrulline or ornithine, right? All these precursors, and the nitric oxide goes up and expands the blood vessels, that could create a headache, a pounding headache.
Yeah.
Just like a migraine.
Yeah.
So, remember, folks, I'm giving you curbside service here.
We don't have all the information.
Yeah, no, we don't have all the information. I'm just giving you some things to pursue, and please pursue them with your doctor. But if it comes back again, I would consider going into the doctor and finding out what might be the cause, explain in detail to, this would be an ear, nose, and throat guy, or, just even your GP would be a good start, and find out, look in detail what your diet is, what brings them on, what makes them better, what makes them worse, without even working out, and you want to watch out for that even call it a unicorn, certainly a zebra, of a blood vessel issue, because you got to watch out for the wide. The far outliers, we call them, just to be certain. But it's more than likely something pretty simple that even hydration, make sure you're properly hydrated, could be the issue.
Good point. Thanks, Doc.